asked the question of Frank Reich prior to Kevin Patullo getting the job, if he was offered the offensive coordinating job. And he goes, we had conversations prior to that, and I told Nick I did not want to go back in that role. Then he was offered the consultant role. And prior to him taking the Stanford Cardinal job, Frank Reich just said on the program that, yes, Nick was carving a role out for him as a consultant. And then I asked, were you going to take that job? And he said yes. So he would have been in the building coaching with Kevin Patullo. Instead, he's now the head coach interim of the Stanford Cardinal. Interesting. Let's get our friend Garry Cobb in here. Get his takeaway with that. So, Garry, I just had on Frank, and we had about a 35-minute conversation. By the way, he loves Nick Sirianni. Those guys are just thick as thieves. Those two guys are dear friends. He's so happy that he won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But he also said that he did not want to come back to the Eagles in the offensive coordinating role. They had been talking prior to Kevin getting the job. So my understanding is that prior to Kevin getting the job, there was major conversations of him, and he had said, no, I don't want to be in that role again as an OC. Then I asked him, was there a consulting role? And he said, yes. They were trying to carve out a role for him. And then I asked him, would you have taken that job? He says, yes. Then the Stanford job popped in. What do you think of that he was going to bring Frank Reich back to the coaching staff, and he was going to have Frank on the coaching staff with Kevin Patullo and with him for this 2025 season?
Well, he brings experience, and that's the thing Patullo does not bring. He has he's of course seen a lot of big time football and been a part of it and everything, but he hasn't been running the show. He hasn't been the guy that has a final say, let's say, on a play or a final say on who's going to be starting at a certain position. He's there, basically giving his input and everything. But, it's something when you got to go lay in the bed and you made the call. So you're the one, they're going to fry if it goes south. See, you're the one you're the first neck that they're going to crack. They're going to be ready to put you, you're the one they're going to go after. And you got coaches that say they don't hear anything. Come on. They hear, they find out what's going on. In fact, I know the Eagles, they have their PR guys. That's part of their job to say, hey, look, hey, they're going after you, man. Hey, such and such, and even let you know who the media guys are. Okay, this guy here this guy's been killing you, this other guy here kind of likes you, so they know, like, what's really going on. And so the fact that he hasn't really had to do that, especially in Philadelphia, it could get hot. It gets hot.
Let me ask you this, though, and no way am I saying that Frank said this, or am I thinking that Frank even suggested this?
Yeah.
But do you think that they were bringing that role in just as hedging their bets if Patullo wasn't working out, that they were bringing him in, kind of sitting there on the side?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, and I don't know to just take over the spot, but to be giving that experience, that he got his, he's there kind of, looking over his shoulder and being a help there, not to be a backstabber, but a guy to be in there and who's been through this, because it gets hot in the NFL. Come on, man. Especially like this team right now. Come on. If he's thinking up the joint, who you think everybody's pointing the finger at? Offense ain't moving. We got all this talent. The offense, everybody's shutting us down. The problem is this Patullo guy. Come on, that. That's the way it is, and I'm sure he knows that. He's been around here in Philly, and you got a team that won the Super Bowl last year, so he's got to come in here. And you know what? This is part of the fun.
I didn't realize though that they were trying to get Frank in the building. Though, I mean, we kind of guessed it, but for Frank to say it, I was kind of shocked. he was like, no, I wasn't going to be the OC, but they did offer me to roll, and I was going to take it.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense that you have somebody with that experience, because he's kind of the old head, Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, they had him here a while. He wasn't even the coordinator, but he was there in the background as a as a guy that they could go to. And it's not where you're trying to stab the guy in the back, but they got a guy there with experience who's going to be somebody you can bounce things off of, and can give you some encouragement when them dogs start coming out. Because
I hear you, man. I was kind of shocked when he said that, but
because I tell you, he is on the hot. Without even saying he's on the hot seat, he is on the hot seat.
Yes,
come on. He got to know. I know he's going home. Talking to the missus, she's going, baby, how's everything going? You know about this job. Hey, come on, you've been up there in the stands. You know the way it gets here. So we got to start off fast, We got to start off fast. And, I call Jalen every night, see how he's doing, and we got the Saquon. He's, we want to get him fresh, want to make sure he's fresh and everything. And I'm thinking about doing this, doing that. He's going to make little tweaks to the things, but, he doesn't want to get away from the things that worked. But he's got to know that they got no place for them starting slow. They got no place for that, man. Hey, I saw people talking about the HBO stuff, with the and you can see.
Do you want them on Hard Knocks?
You know what? I mean, I wouldn't have a problem. Now you see, I don't have a problem, but it could be more. But you know what? They might as well go on it. You know what?
Wait a minute. Howie, could you see Howie there going? He'd have 88 phones. He'd be looking like he was Gordon Gekko. Hey. Like, he'd be like going like he's in Wall Street, going like all dressed up to the nines, talking to people.
But you know what? They might as well go because they won the Super Bowl. Everybody's going. I mean, how is it going to increase? They're here in Philly. They are the ones that everybody's watching, everything they're doing. So they're going to be on the hot seat anyway. Like I said, all of those guys, just like, the assistant coach, he's going to be on the hot seat. Nick is going to be on the hot seat. Jalen, the head coach, the quarterback, offensive coordinator, those guys, come on. They're going to be, everybody's going to be watching them. And then really the work is going to have to be done by the defensive coaches because they got to replace so many guys. And they're going to expect the offense to carry them for a while, see?
And especially the passing game. I'm going to ask you about that.
Yeah, especially the passing game. You're right.
Hey, I could just see Howie Roseman likes Blue Horseshoe, the edge rusher from BC. Okay, yeah. Anyway, I got to throw this out. I want to throw this at you about Barkley, and you tell me where you think he lands.
Okay.
Here are the guys that gained $2,000 and what they did the following year. OJ, 2003. He had 1973, came back, he had 1,025 yards rushing. 1984, Eric Dickerson, 2105, came back with 1,034. In 1987, Barry Sanders had the best one, 2,053. He ended up with 1,491. Terrell Davis, 2008-98, had 211 yards. 2003, Jamal Lewis, 2,066, had 966 yards. 2009, Chris Jones had 2,006, had 1,364, pretty damn good. Adrian Peterson, 2009 or 12, had 2,097, came back with 1,100 yards. In 2020, Derrick Henry, 2,027, came back with 967 yards. And here's Barkley, had 672 carries at Penn State. And then, counting the postseason, he's had over 1,700 yards rushing in his 7 years, which comes out to 2,500 rushing attempts. Where do you think this guy lands this year after having and led the league in carries with over 400 touches this year? Where do you think he lands? You don't think he puts another $2,000?
No, he's not. He's not even going to get the ball enough to do that. I think they're gonna slow walk him a little bit. They're not going to give him as much of the weight to carry that because they want to keep him healthy and they would like to keep him fresh and they would like to keep him where he is a big factor as the season goes along, especially at the end of the season. They want him healthy and fresh. So I don't think they're going to give the ball to him as much. So I would say, 12 to 1,400. That's what I'm kind of be thinking. And they got the kid from where is it? New Orleans,
Green Bay. AJ Dillon.
They brought him in because they're going to feed him some. He's a big back who can take some of the load, and that way they can keep Saquon healthy and keep him fresh. And so that's why I don't think that they're going to give him the ball. Like he'll get on a roll. He's going to get on a roll in some of the games. But they're not going to feed him like they did last year. No, I don't think they're going to do that. No.
Garry, what you're more concerned with on what Vic's job is ahead of him? Replacing half of the secondary or replacing the front four? You're missing 2 guys in your front four, and you're missing 2 guys in your secondary.
Yeah.
What do you think is a bigger job for them and for Vic this coming offseason here? Because, I don't care what people say. Half your secondary's gone.
That's right.
And, half your defensive line is gone, who were very productive in the number 1 ranked defense. Mm-hmm. What's more concerning to you?
Well, that's a good one because I do like some of the kids that they have really in both places, in the secondary and up front. But I think it's harder to replace the people up front, because I think the people in the league, they value somebody can get to the quarterback. Come on, that guy is of more value than somebody's a good cover guy, because you get to the quarterback, you affect the whole game. So I think that replacing those guys up front, because if they do get pressure from those guys up front where they can get a pass rush, these guys can do a good job against the run, then you might as well know they're going to be in the hunt to try to win that thing again. If they can get those guys up front, because it's hard to replace those guys, man. There's somebody that can give it to you consistently, too, who's good against the pass and the run, who can get pressure on the quarterback if they're being blocked one-on-one. And so that's really where the challenge is. And, they got some promising youngsters that showed some things last year. But, coming in and doing a little spot duty is much different than being a starter who is counted on to be a dominating player. That's a lot more is asked of you, and it's a lot harder job every game to be getting pressure on the quarterback consistently.
Garry, everyone liked what Nolan Smith did in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And everyone keeps circling, well, they should write some of the checks that they just signed, some of these contracts, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams. Okay, well, when you don't have Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, albeit I give it to you that Jalen Carter probably benefited because he takes on the majority of the double teams there. I get that. But at the end of the day, doesn't Nolan Smith playing behind those guys, doesn't he benefit from playing behind a guy like Milton Williams and a guy like Josh Sweat, who has been a productive guy? As you know, like you just laid it out for us, people don't realize if you up the volume of plays, people are assuming just because you get more opportunities, your volume of activity is going to increase. That's not the case. Sometimes when you up the activity, your production lowers.
Yeah.
Where are you with Nolan Smith? He's an undersized guy. Do you think he can play 800 snaps, 700 snaps, first and second down, as small as he is? Do you think that guy can hold up?
Well, he's got his work cut out for him. He did a tremendous job last year. And I like the fact that, he does know about leverage, meaning that he when he comes around that corner, he's about as low as anybody in the league. So he does a great job there. And he does it all against the run, too, where he stays down. He knows that if he stands up, he has no chance. Because, these guys he's going against 335, 350, 360. nearly 400 pounds, some of the offensive tackles. So he knows he has no chance against them if he doesn't stay underneath them. But he's really gotten better at that. I think that he's probably going to try to put on a little weight, to get heavier. But of course, he still doesn't want to do anything having that speed around that corner. But I think he's going to be okay. See, he's already tasted a lot of it. The whole thing is going to be, who else can they get some help?
Did he turn your belief on him around with the way he played?
Yes, he did. Because he showed that he played even when he was banged up. He was productive at times when he was banged up. And that's what you find out about an NFL player. Look, if everything's got to be perfect and you don't have any bumps and bruises, you don't know what it is to play in the NFL, to play football. Come on. You got to be able to play when you're banged up. So what? We don't even want to hear about all the little nicks and stuff. You just got to show up and play, and you got to be productive. And he did show he can play through those things because that is part of the game. You are not going to be 100% healthy if that's the only time you're going to play and be productive. And he showed he can play through that. That's part of playing in the NFL. Sometimes if a guy's always hurt, sometimes it shows you he doesn't have the mental toughness to play all the time. And so, therefore, you can't depend on a guy like that. But I think you can depend on him, even at his size, is that he's got the toughness to line up and play week in and week out.
Nick wants to keep DeJean in the slot. Do you think that that's his role moving forward? I know that they had debated. There was talk about putting him out there on the numbers. But do you think that is his role, that's where you want to see him play because of productive as he was a year ago?
Well, it's, it's hard to say something is more important than playing out on the corner. But I think that him playing in that nickel position is probably even more important because, see, and we talked about this a little bit before, most of the guys that can cover in the league, they don't want to tackle anybody. No. It's getting to where it's a disease in the league now where all of the cornerbacks, they don't want to tackle anybody. They want I'm sorry, kid, this is tackle football. I know you can cover and you just want to run and get interceptions and everything, but you're going to have to tackle somebody. That's part of your job. That's part of the rules. So he's a guy that likes to tackle. You got to be willing to tackle at that nickel spot. And you're going to have to deal with, have to go in there and stick your nose in there against the run. You're going to have to tackle some big people with the tight ends, big wide receivers, running backs, all that kind of thing. He's shown he can do that. So he's valuable in that position. That really makes them it makes them better than a lot of defenses in the league because they got him there. Because a lot of teams in the league, they got corners and they try to move a corner in there. That corner can cover the people in there, but he doesn't want to tackle anybody. So, so a lot of times you can run against that defense. They throw little screens and things. The guy doesn't want to make any tackles. And so they got to keep him at the nickel spot because he's just so valuable there because of his size, his ability to get off blocks, and his willingness to tackle.
Couple last ones here for you, Gary. Do you believe that Jeremiah Trotter is good enough to fill the Oren Burks role?
I think so, but he's got to prove it. He's going to have to. That's not a sure thing because speed wise, he's got a challenge there. Because and a lot of the linebackers do because you look in there and you're covering a wide receiver in that in a zone. He's in your area. And a guy, especially a lot of those guys that are in the slot, they're just there because they're quick, And so he's going to have to deal with guys like that. He's going to have to cover tight ends, running backs, and everything. So he's a smart kid. So I think he's going to be able to handle that. But we'll have to wait and see. He's got his work cut out for him. But I do think he can do the job, So it's good. I know he's looking forward to it. And from what I saw, the kid is going to be able to do the thing because a lot of it's mental. And with the other guys that have played in that position, that's the big thing to do is they got to be like a DB. They got to understand pass coverages. They got to understand the different routes and things, the route trees and all the different things that quarterbacks are trying to do to them in that situation where they're in there in that curl position and everything. So he's got the mentality to do it. So that's why I think he can handle it.
What do you think is a tougher replace for Vic? Replacing Josh Sweat or Milton Williams?
Probably Milton Williams, because
of the versatility you can play up and down the line.
And that guy is such a key because they're going to double Jalen Carter, so they're doubling him. That other guy that's one-on-one, he's got to make some noise. And if you can get some pressure from that inside like that right away, it disturbs the offense because of the way the quarterback's got to take his head off of the guys downfield. If you got any kind of pressure inside. And that's why that's so important. So if they could get a guy that could do that, man, that's going to mean it's going to mean probably that they got a shot to go back. If they could get a guy that could do that, because right away the quarterback's got to pull his eyes off of downfield. He's got to move and everything, and then Carter's going to still be making noise even with the double team. You got that pressure inside, man. It helps it helps all of the coverages. Because the quarterback's he's got to take his head off downfield. He can't be looking downfield if he got pressure in his face. And then he might not see it. And then they're knocking balls down and things. So that pressure inside, boy, it makes the other guys outside better when you got pressure inside. So that's so important.
Last one here.
Yeah.
We are right now, we're probably around 21 days out from the Eagles having to make a decision on the fifth-year option on Jordan Davis. Are you giving him that fifth-year option? It would pay him roughly around $13 million. And I'll lay it out also. Plays about 24 snaps a game. Do they pick that option up? Or what, in your opinion, do you think they do? Or will the draft determine that on who's there at that pick? Because Garry, I kind of laid this out last time for you, and I'll do it again. If they pick his fifth year up, it's 13 instead of having to pay him. If you give him a 3-year option or a 3-year extension of $18 million, you get him on an extra year. You get him at 13. You draft Walter Nolan, say, and you have 3 rookies this year going into this year on rookie contracts where you're not paying enormous money. You're paying rookie contracts. Obviously, in the offseason, Jalen Carter is going to be addressed, and he's going to be a hefty salary, but you still got some young guys, and it gives you a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. Where are you right now on the fifth-year option for Jordan Davis?
I just can't see 13. 13, I mean, I can't do 13.
Yeah, no,
I might be able to do 10. I might be able to do 10 or 9, maybe. 13. No, I can't do 13. You got to give me more than what I've seen for 13. I'm sorry, but not 13. Because
not knowing that in the offseason I got to pay nearly 40 for the other guy.
That's right. So I can't do that. I mean, he's got to take less
if he wants to stay.
If he wants to stay. And maybe 10. Maybe 10, something like that. But he's got to know that, look, the passing game is the game. You got to get pressure on the quarterback. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, I'm sorry, we can't pay you. You got to be able to get to the quarterback. You just play against the run. I mean, we could get kids coming out of college that could play run, meaning like they can't rush the pass. What's that?
In the third round.
That's right. That's not number one first round pick if you can't get to the quarterback. And who knows, maybe he develops pass rush, but he got to develop in that area.
4 years now. It's 4 years though, man. I mean,
I don't see, come on. The guy is so powerful that he should be able to develop that. I mean,
and he runs a 4.78 at 340 pounds. I don't get it.
He's good enough athlete. He's got long arms. He's got the power and everything, but he's got to be thinking, look, son, as his agent talked to him, look, son, if you want to get paid, you got to get to the quarterback, man. So you got, that should be the thing he works on above everything else. He should be working how to attack. He doesn't attack one of the shoulders. He runs straight into the guy. He doesn't
Do you
attack
think
us solely.
Do you think he's over or underachieves his time in Philly here?
He's underachieved. He's underachieved. I mean, because they think he's underachieved because they thought he was. I mean, they drafted him in that number one pick that they expect to come in, that he's going to be able to develop a pass rush and everything. And I still think he can, but he's got to realize how important it is that he learns you cannot attack a guy, just running into him, pushing back. You got to develop more than that, And he hasn't done that so far. So hopefully he will, but I could not get. They could no 13. No, just for, playing against the run. No, you can't do that. This is the NFL, man. You got to get to the quarterback. You got to get to the quarterback. Come on.
And again, like you said, I mean, it's a fact that he was drafted 13th. They thought he was going to be the next Fletcher Cox.
Yeah,
and
that's
he's
right.
not. He's not. He's been, and no disrespect to anybody, but I'm not even sure he's been Corey Simon. I don't even think he's been Corey Simon.
That's right. You're right. He hasn't been Corey Simon, because Corey Simon was a better pass rusher than that.
Yep.
I mean, when you are single blocked, man, you got to show something. And here you single blocked all the time because they're always going to try to double team Jalen Carter. And here you got a shot, man. But somebody would need to tell him, his agent or somebody to tell him, look, man, that's what this is about. And I don't see anybody else going to be jumping up and down to get him if he can't rush the passer. But I see a guy who's good enough athlete to be able to do it. Like, you got to mentally be more disciplined. You got to learn how to attack one half of the guy. You can't be just running into the guy and pushing him back. Come on. Kids do that in high school, man. Come on.
Hey, I want to get this last one here again. I want to reiterate, and I want to get you on record here.
Mm-hmm.
When Frank Reich, who we had on again, just to get you on record here, he said he was offered a consultant role. He didn't want to be the OC role, but they were carving out a role for him in the coaching staff. Does Garry Cobb believe that was going to be a guy that, in case Kevin Patullo was not going to succeed, that was a guy that because Frank would have another voice who was a Frank Reich guy in the building for them to go to if this thing wasn't going well in the passing game? Because I'll say this to you, Kevin Patullo was here last year.
Yeah.
Frank's known for passing the football. He's known for those RPOs on what he did with Wentz and what he did with Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would have been some tandem of him having that guy in that building there with him. Do you believe that Nick and the organization was potentially hedging their bets of putting him in there over Kevin Patullo just to make sure? Because, again, you elevated a guy who had never been a play caller before in Brian Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a track record of doing that.
Yeah, well, I think that it would take some confidence on Patullo's part not to be bothered by that. But clearly he was there as to have another voice in the room, meaning like you got a guy who's got ideas, and so he was going to be there and having it really maybe helping Patullo some, but clearly there as another set of eyes, got ideas, another brain there, another offensive wizard there looking over things. That's definitely what he was going to be.
Garry, I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much. Catch up with you soon. Thank you, Garry.
Right,
you got it. That is my friend Garry Cobb. How many people believe that? I mean, you were hedging your bets. I think you're hedging your bets when you do that. All right. Do me a favor, guys. Please hit the like button. Still got a ton of stuff to get. I haven't got to my Eagle questions and where I'm looking at right now, 17 days out from the NFL draft. Also, my NFL, I got some more bold predictions on that. The top moves so far this offseason, I'll give you my takes on that. Also, options at number 32. We will take a look at that. Don't forget my great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number one injury law firm in the country, with thousands of attorneys from coast to coast. By the way, I've been talking with John Morgan the last 3 or 4 days. He is so thrilled to death. I think Dan Morgan, his son's coming on in the morning, and he was up at Michigan this past week talking to kids up there about the NIL program. And Dan Morgan, who is going to have the company, ended up handed down to him. His mom, Ultima, and them are going to have Dan run the company here in a couple of years. So Dan's going to be the new face of Morgan & Morgan real soon. He's going to join us. I think that's tomorrow or Wednesday. So we'll talk to him. You talk about another impressive guy. He's that as well. Make sure you check him out, folks. Go to forthepeople.com/Big Sills or Pound Law 529. I'm telling you, without a doubt, this will be the easiest decision you ever make if you need an attorney that will represent you with a track record of getting for over $26 billion in recovery for their clients. That's forthepeople.com/Big Sills or Pound Law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sills sent you.
This is Eric. When he got injured in a car